Greetings, children, and welcome to my chamber. My name is Rotherick Gastblood, and I'm your host of Tales from the Dark Chamber. This week, we have a great show for you. Tales to make your skin crawl. Each week, my chambermate and I read a scary tale that we found on the internet, or perhaps left under some corpse. Either way, we think you're going to like it, and we're just dying for you to hear it. So sit right back, light a candle, and let's have a ghoul evening.
Oh, hey, Rotherick. How was your holiday in Corpse Gore, or whatever it was?
You mean Gru Cops?
Yeah.
Yes, I was there for a few days. Had a lovely time there.
Oh, really?
Yes, we went haunting the local castles, dug up some corpses, ran amok in the lowlands there. Generally, a normal holiday.
Okay, I guess I meant, how was your Christmas holiday?
That was my Christmas holiday. How was yours?
I stayed at home, or at the mansion here. You know, the Scarecrow really is a great, guy, if you will.
Oh?
Yeah, after Chester found him, the Scarecrow and I watched the mummy's hand that came back to life and ate New York.
What? That sounds like a...
No, really. We did. We ate popcorn, or shall I say, I ate popcorn. He just dribbled it all down his front. His head is made out of burlap and filled with hay.
Kind of like someone I know.
What was that, Rotherick?
Oh, never mind. I'm just glad you had a decent holiday, even though you were locked down here in the mansion.
Oh, I wasn't locked down. No, I found the key and...
Oh, darn.
Well, when you hide it under the clock in the hallway beside the statue of...
Well, I guess I'll have to find a better hiding place next time.
Yups, and if it weren't for Steve...
Who?
Steve, you know, the Scarecrow.
His name is Steve?
Yeah, and he's a...
Woody, you really need to get out and find new friends.
Yeah, I guess so. But I still have you as a friend, eh, Rotherick?
Possibly.
Whatever. But that does remind me of tonight's ending of our tale. Our girls in action, Tracy, Sarah, and her son Daniel, are still down in the basement. Rather, the laboratory. When all of a sudden... Well, I'll save that for the story. What do you say, Steve? Enjoy. ToMmY, a Portland, Maine series, Part 6, by Medic Man. Testing, testing, one of the men spoke into the camera. The audio was distorted but still manageable to make out. Okay, let's begin. Hello, this is Dr. James Wells. It is currently 3 a.m. in the morning, October 5th, 1957. Behind me is Charles Harrison. This is the subject 21, and you are currently seeing the final stages of PAX-7. As you can see, the organic cellular regeneration process has been proven successful, with a 97% restoration rate. The first 20 have failed. PAX-7 is officially complete. The metabolic rate of PAX-7 has increased threefold with an addition of a synthetic catalyst compound. The compound is attached to the host DNA and undergone gene manipulation therapy at an alarming rate. The host's epidermis was preserved to prevent organic decay. However, the host organs, bone structure, circulatory system, and especially the brain remain highly active. The host's muscular system has increased mass at an alarming rate. Latest blood tests show no signs of illness. Subject Thomas Harrison was confirmed dead from multi-system cancer, was preserved for testing, and, well, has been reanimated. Contact with subject thus far has failed. It seems the subject's brain was somehow reverted to some sort of primal functioning similar to a canine with rabies.
Hey, look, Wells. I think he knows who I am. Look,
Charles yells excited. Charles, get away from it!
Lo, look, he's smiling at me. Tommy?
That's not Tommy. Tommy is dead, Charles. Get back away from it.
No, it's him. Look, hold on. He's trying to speak.
Damn it, Charles, listen to me. Tommy is dead. That thing... Suddenly, the picture cuts out and the screen goes white before the tape flaps around the reel in a circular motion until Tracy clicks the projector off. Sarah was still staring at the screen in utter shock. Tracy licks her dry lips and holds the axe closer to her chest. We need to get the fuck out of here. Now, Tracy slowly said, looking at Sarah. They meet eyes with the same question in mind. What happened to Tommy? We can't go back the way we came. Come on, Tracy said, heading to the only other door in the room. She pushed the wooden door open and immediately realized that they were now in the room that they had just seen in the video. A foul smell hit Tracy's nostrils and her eyes started to water. Oh, she turned her head in disgust. Sarah let out a shriek as she grabbed Danny's face and turned it away from the horror that faced them. In the center of the room and hanging from meat hooks from the neck were 3 corpses. They were severely decayed. They were swinging gently as they hung from the ceiling. One had a dirty lab coat, and the other was too decayed to make out anything. The third was in a dress, with a mandible missing. Oh my God! Danny, don't look! Sarah yelled out. Stay behind me, Tracy yelled out, slowly moving forward. Sarah was right on her heels, pulling Danny, who was trying to get a look at the bodies. In the center was a chair. It was old and tainted with thick hardened blood. The chair was rested on a large circular metal grate, and under was a large drain. What were they doing to him? Tracy asked, eyeing the room. In the far right wall were the long glass cylinder tubes. They were empty now. She could only imagine what PAX-7 was. It was unbelievable. She had yet stumbled upon another story. The reporter in her was thrilled, but at the same time she wanted nothing more than to leave this hell. To the left of the cylinders was a large storage room. The door was ripped off its hinges. Inside contained old white styrofoam packages. Hundreds of them were thrown about in an unorganized manner. Look, Tracy said, pointing to the storage room. What do those look like to you? She asked. I don't want to know, Sarah said. Those are meat packaging. Those bastards were feeding it, she said. Can we please leave? Sarah yelled. Yeah, sorry, come on. There's another door over there. It has to be the way out, Tracy said. As they picked up their pace towards the metal door on the north wall, a sudden shattering sound barked out from the projection room. Something had fallen over. What was that? Sarah asked, and turned around towards the door sharply. Slow, heavy footsteps sluggishly thumped around and grew louder with each step. A soft, deep moan barked into the atmosphere. All 3 of them jumped at the sound. Sarah shot Tracy a look of utter terror and opened her mouth to speak. Suddenly, the door burst open so hard it cracked the wooden frame. In the doorway stood a familiar scarecrow both Sarah and Danny had seen in the field. It slumped over into the doorframe and curled its gloved hand around the frame to gain balance. Its burlap sack moved in and out as it took deep breaths. Its unnatural dark eyes were looking right at Danny, and it moaned deep and long like an injured rabid animal. Run! Tracy screamed. Mommy! Danny cried out. Go! 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 Sarah yelled, almost pushing Tracy over to get to the metal door in the front of them. They pumped their legs hard as they almost fell through the door and slammed it behind them. I don't see a lock, Sarah yelled out. Fuck it, just go, Tracy barked. In front of them lay an old metal staircase that spiraled around lower into the darkness. The thick mildew air was suffocating as they drew in every breath, making their way down. Tracy's flashlight was shaking intensely from fright. They hit the bottom hard and were standing in front of 3 different tunnels. An old faded plaque with directions was crookedly hanging on the wall. Left tunnel to processing. Center tunnel to exit. Right tunnel, imaging and laboratory, it read. Here, come on, Tracy yelled, pointing straight. The loud banging from the top of the staircase reminded them of whatever it was. It was close behind them. Not knowing where they were, they sprinted down the dark tunnel. The ground was soaked, and thick mud kicked up from their shoes as they ran. The tunnel narrowed the further they ran, and eventually became so narrow it forced them in a single-file line as they dredged their way through. The walls were softened, and thin strands of roots jetted out, hitting Tracy in the face as she pushed forward. A long, gurgling, guttural moan echoed in the thick darkness behind them. It grew closer to them as they were forced to take slower strides in the narrow tunnel. After what felt like hours, Tracy's flashlight spotted the end. A wooden ladder was secured to the wall and made its way up. As they neared, Tracy silently prayed it was a ladder to the surface. She grabbed it and shined the light up. Relief washed over her as it looked like a round hole and a wooden beam across it. Above the wooden beam looked like small white lights. Was that the sky? "Let's go. We have to climb fast. Whatever you do, don't stop," she ordered. She made her way up. The unforgiving ladder croaked and wobbled as she climbed. Sarah pushed Danny forward, and then she grabbed the ladder as he made his way up. As she climbed, her chest nearly caved in when she felt a rough-gloved hand grab her ankle. "Ah!" she screamed out, almost falling backwards onto the scarecrow, who was holding onto her tightly. Sarah attempted to kick free, but was unsuccessful. She strained to keep her hands on the ladder as it pulled. "Let go!" she cried out. Panic washed over her as she felt her fingers slipping. She was getting too tired to hold on. She couldn't break free from its death grip. "Mom! Here!" Danny yelled out, lowering down an open pocket knife. Sarah quickly grabbed it and stabbed it down as hard as she could onto its hand. It yelled out in pain and finally let go of her ankle. She pushed up as hard as she could to gain distance from the abomination below. Her whole body ached as she climbed. Finally, the familiar smell of fresh air hit her face. The air became less thick as she neared the top. They had reached the surface. "It's a well!" Tracy yelled as she pulled herself out and onto the surface. Danny was next, and finally Sarah rolled over the cobblestone and onto the wet ground. She took in deep breaths of fresh air. Her lungs never hurt so bad. The rain had stopped. The house was still dark, and both Sarah's car and the van remained where they left it. Sarah stood up and rested her hands on her knees to catch her breath. "Are you okay?" Tracy asked. "Yeah, I think so," Sarah muttered. "We can't stop. We have to keep moving," Tracy barked. Tracy eyed the van. The tires were flat. "Shit!" she yelled out. "Do you have the keys to your car?" she asked. Sarah let out a chuckle. "Yeah, in the house." They both eyed the house and then looked back at each other. A loud moan escaped the well as a gloved hand curled around the cobblestone. "Come on, get inside," Tracy yelled. "But what about Lucas?" Sarah panicked. "Take your pick," she screamed. "I'd pick Lucas." All three took off towards the house as the muscular monster got to his feet. Its gait was sloppy, and he walked with a limp. They burst through the front door and slammed it closed. Sarah immediately locked it. Tracy handed the flashlight to Sarah and held the axe close. It was dark. The living room was a complete mess. Boxes were thrown around, and its contents were thrown about the floor. "Lucas!" Tracy bravely yelled out. There was no reply. Sarah ran to the window and peered out. The scarecrow was nowhere to be seen. "The back door!" Sarah screamed. She took off towards the rear of the house and stopped immediately at the sight of Fred's mangled body on the kitchen floor. Sarah gasped and held her hand to her mouth. Tony had been killed. "Tony!" Tracy screamed. "Mommy!" Danny yelled out, pointing at the basement door. It was ripped open. It looked as if something had peeled it back like a sardine can from the center. Do you think it got Lucas?" Sarah asked. "I fucking hope so," she yelled. "We have to get the keys. That's all that matters right now. Think, Sarah. Where are the keys?" I don't know. They could be anywhere. Lucas threw all our stuff around." "Okay. You two check the living room. I got the kitchen. Be fast and thorough. Yell if you need me," Tracy said. Sarah nodded her head and made her way into the living room with Danny right behind her. Tracy squinted her eyes. She placed the axe on the counter. The only light she had was the moon as she ruffled her way around the counters and table. She lightly brushed her arms around, feeling around to try to make out each thing she touched. She reached out and heard a jingle to her left. It sounded like keys. As she turned, something softly grazed her ear. "Ah!" she yelled out in panic. "Looking for these?" Lucas whispered in her ear. "Sarah! Danny! Run!" Tracy yelled out, and then she felt a sudden sharp pain, followed by an explosion of blood as Lucas punched her in the face. She hit the kitchen tile and rolled in a puddle of cold, thickened blood. Lucas grabbed her hair and drug her across the floor. "Come on, bitch," he angrily said. Tracy tried to kick, but had no traction on the blood-soaked floor. She only made streaks as she struggled trying to break free. Spurts of warm blood gushed down the sides of her face as she struggled to breathe. She started gagging. He dragged her into the living room. Both Danny and Sarah were frozen in fear. He let her go and stood up, knife in hand. He flashed a sadistic grin at Sarah. "Danny, don't speak," Sarah whispered and cut the flashlight off. They were surrounded by darkness. "You think that will save you?" he yelled out. Sarah took Danny's hand and crouched low. Taking small steps, she and Danny crept towards the front door. "I'll kill you. Do you hear me? I'll kill the boy first. Then once I'm done with him, I'll have you begging to die," he yelled out in the darkness. Lucas toppled over boxes, almost falling trying to make his way across the living room. Sarah and Danny picked up their pace. They almost made it to the door when an electric hum popped in the atmosphere and the lights flickered back on. Lucas erupted in laughter as Sarah and Danny stood up. He quickly circled the opposite side of the room and blocked their exit. "Well," he growled, "this must be my lucky day." Suddenly, the front door burst open, sending glass and wood shards in all directions. Lucas spun around just in time to be impaled through the stomach by a rusted pitchfork. He let out a scream and was viciously hoisted into the air and held, suspended above the scarecrow. Lucas flailed his arms outwards, grabbing anything that could help him. The scarecrow shook the pitchfork up and down viciously, causing it to go deeper inside Lucas's stomach. Finally, he slumped forward and was still. His body was hurled backwards violently and made a sickening thud as it unnaturally hit the wall. Sarah pulled Danny back. With nowhere to go, she pushed him into the corner and stood in front of him with her hands out. The scarecrow lowered his blood-soaked pitchfork and slowly made his way towards them. "Go away! Go away, you freak!" Sarah screamed. As he approached, he stood tall, towering over them. He cocked his head to one side, studying Sarah's facial expressions. Danny desperately fumbled in his pocket and pulled out the locket he had found on his neck. It glistened against the light and caught the scarecrow's attention. He reached forward slowly. "Here, take it," Danny whimpered. He took it from Danny's hand and held it close to his eyes. He let out a soft moan. He attempted to unlatch it but failed and let out an angry cry. "Here, let me," Danny nervously said and reached his hand out. He took the locket and unlatched it. Inside were two small black and white pictures of a young man and woman. It was faded and weathered. "Is that you?" Danny asked. The scarecrow moaned. His eyes grew saddened and then angry again. He angrily reached out to grab him, but once again distracted by Danny. "Wait, who's that?" he said, pointing at the female in the picture. Once again his eyes grew sad. "Why, that would be me, son," an old frail voice rang out from the broken doorway. In stepped the old woman. She shuffled past the debris with her cane and slowly limped past Lucas's corpse. She made her way towards the scarecrow, whose eyes were fixed on Danny and Sarah. "That's enough now, Thomas. That's enough," Julia said, and put her soft, weak-looking hand on its shoulder. "Yes, I was beautiful once. Yes. Time, you see, is an enemy to vanity," she nodded at them. Her back was hunched over and she leaned onto the cane. "Oh, Thomas, what has your daddy done to you, boy?" she sadly spoke. She placed her hands on the burlap sack. It reached up and grabbed her hands and leaned into them. "I was waiting for him to wake up, you see. It has been way too long. I wasn't sure at first he ever would again. Thomas seems to wake when he wishes. He has dealt with all the pests that bother our lands. When Harrison died, the city left his basement alone. He was a dear old friend to the mayor. I assume they left his possessions with whomever owned the farm, but it never sold, and we were left alone. When I heard a young woman and her child had bought it, I assumed Thomas would deal with you two as well. Yes, it was our unruly guest who messed everything up," she said, pointing to Lucas. She reached up and removed the burlap sack from its head. Thomas's face was severely disfigured. His tan, waxy, preserved flesh was crudely stretched back and stapled to the skull in a sloppy manner. His right eye protruded half an inch from its socket. His mouth was sewn shut. Sarah gasped and turned Danny away from the horror. Yes, I suppose beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Thomas was once a very handsome man indeed. Of all the harlots and women about, he chose me. I've loved him dearly since. He was a strong, sensitive boy, and I was to be married to another. Thomas killed that man so that we could be together. Had we known the ramifications of such act, we'd have run away instead. But mind you, we love our farm. The man I was to marry was a spoiled, upper-class aristocrat type from a family of doctors. When word got out of his death, they suspected my ToMmY. They couldn't prove it. No. My soon-to-be brother-in-law convinced Harrison ToMmY had fallen ill. He was slowly poisoning him. They said he had cancer. That was a lie. I knew it then as I know it now. Before he died, they told Harrison of an experimental drug the Germans had abandoned research on. They used their influences and power to build what you saw down below us. The Germans abandoned their research for the reason you see. They knew it was unnatural, but did they care? No. Look at my poor Thomas now. So, Harrison preserved him, and they turned him into what he is today. She reached into her pocket and removed a small vial of bright blue liquid. She unscrewed it and drank from it. Within moments, her posture had changed. She stood up tall and tossed her cane to the ground. But he died, Sarah weakly said. Oh, no, dear. There's no such thing as death, she said. The police will be here sometime tomorrow morning, I'm sure. They'll go digging. Our secrets will be uncovered. I knew it wouldn't stay buried forever. Our time here is finished. We all move on. I guess it's time we do as well. Samuel was his name, the son of that bastard who did this to my ToMmY. Yes. Tracy stumbled out of the kitchen holding the axe as a crutch, her eyes shocked at the old woman's story. She struggled to stand and fell back onto the axe. If you wish to live, dear, you'll leave now. All of you. You'll leave this place, and you'll never return here. You are never to speak a word of this again. If you decide to, you'll pay dearly. I'm awfully tired of this bloodshed. Yes. Come, Thomas. It's time to go, she said. Thomas put his burlap sack back on and followed the old woman out. They were gone. Tracy wobbled over to Sarah with the keys in her hand. Let's get the fuck out of here, she said. Where will we go? Sarah asked. The police, Tracy said. What happens when they find out about all the stuff we found? We'll tell them the truth. We were just as surprised. Sarah nods and grabs the keys. She reached down and hugged Danny. You were so brave. Are you okay? She asked. I'm fine. Can we go, please? Sarah grabbed the keys and made their way out the door. As they got to the car and took off towards the city, they sat in silence. Nobody dared to speak a word of the horror they had witnessed that night. Tracy thought of Tony and started to tear up. Her tears suddenly turned into laughter. What? Sarah asked. It's ironic. What is? The biggest story in the world fell into my lap, and I can't even tell it, she softly spoke. October 31st, 50 miles south of Portland, Maine, 8:30 a.m. Sam finished up his toast. He was late. He had a presentation at a local hospital about a breakthrough in research on strokes. He adjusted his tie in the mirror. He took a quick sip of his mug of coffee, kissed his wife, and stepped out. He was in such a rush he almost dropped his briefcase when he saw it. His blood ran cold. Where the hell did this ugly thing come from? He looked back to the front door to see if anyone else had taken notice yet. He crossed his arms and cocked his head to the side to get a better look. Hanging there sluggishly on a wooden cross and slightly blowing in the soft morning breeze, stood the ugliest scarecrow Samuel had ever seen. ToMmY, a Portland, Maine series, Part 6, by Medic Man. Well, folks, that's our story tonight. Rotherick and I hope you enjoyed it. We sure had a great time bringing it to you, and we really appreciate you listening. Tune in next week when we bring you another chilling Tales from the Dark Chamber. And just a note, if you're an aspiring author and want your story read here on Tales from the Dark Chamber, send us a note at talesfromthedarkchamber@gmail.com. If it creeps old Rotherick out enough, we'll air it. And subscribe to our channel here for notification of our next new episode, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Remember, hit that like button and help us grow the channel. Also, make sure you tell your friends about us. Spread the word. If you want your story recorded for your own use, or just want to have it, check out my website at woodygvoiceover.net. You can order there. And again, thank you for listening tonight.